split verdict this afternoon for former Toledo City Councilman Gary Johnson, who is facing federal bribery charges. Guilty on one count, not guilty on the other. And jurors telling the judge they voted guilty on that charge with heavy hearts. IT reporter Sean Haggerty has been following the case since it broke nearly 3 years ago. He's live with a wrap on today's verdict.
Hey, Christian, defense lawyers tell me this is certainly not the verdict that they wanted, but they always knew the $2,000 in cash in this case was going to be the most tricky part of this case. And that's in part why they saw that split verdict today of guilty and not guilty. That $2,000 was one of the amounts that prosecutors called a bribe, and then came up with those two charges for City Councilman Gary Johnson on bribery. He was found guilty of taking the $2,000 in cash around the time of voting yes on an internet cafe in 2020. Now, Johnson said he considered the money a campaign contribution. In fact, he was actually calling campaign donors for the $2,000 to finish off the primary race for Lucas County Sheriff, in which he was running. Johnson did not spend the $2,000, saying he felt uncomfortable getting that much in cash, but he never gave it back until the FBI came calling 2.5 months later and arrested him. He was acquitted of taking a $1,000 check around the time of another internet cafe vote, but he reported that dollar amount on his campaign finance forms. Johnson's lawyer said after court today the jury had its hands full, even deadlocked as of last night.
And they really worked to try to get the best answer they could. This area of the law is incredibly confused. The jury charge we give them is almost unhelpful. But it is the law, so that's what they decided on.
The punishment in this case is up to 20 years in prison, all on a guilty charge of taking $2,000. Lee?
Sean, we understand in a rare move today, the jurors wrote a letter to the judge. What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, that was part of the jury forms that they sent to the judge. And when they voted guilty on that second charge, they said they did it with a heavy heart. And I want to read to you part of the letter that they sent to the judge today, really something that very rarely happens. The letter would go on to say, "We believe Gary is an honest, genuine person with good intentions who was caught up in a bad situation." And that second one, that was the charge they were hung up on yesterday when they said that it was a deadlock. Now, that letter actually kind of illustrates and echoes part of what the FBI was saying in this case originally. The investigation started in 2018. Gary Johnson was never on their radar. He didn't get on their radar until 2020 when he talked to the man who the FBI had set up at that point. It was one of their sources, Nabil Shaheen. The original conversation was about campaign signs. Gary Johnson approaching Shaheen about finding locations for campaign signs. Gary Johnson having no idea that Shaheen was working with the FBI and recording all of their future conversations.
All right, Sean, quite a saga that, as Christian said, you've been covering from the very start. Thanks very much. And Gary Johnson, the only one of the four now former council members to go on trial. The other three, as we've documented, Yvonne Harper, Tyrone Riley, and Larry Sykes, all pleading guilty last December. They were set to be sentenced later this month, but that's now being rescheduled. And to read the latest about the corruption trial, stay up to date with the latest on this case and that sentencing, when sentencing does happen. Make sure to download our free 13 ABC News app. Just scan the QR code on your screen or find it right there in your phone's app store.